not at your level at all. But
No, I've always envied trombonists. I don't know why. More likely to make a living as a violinist, but
yeah, I think so.
Remember old Don Lang?
Sorry?
Don Lang, 6-5
The
special.
Frantic Five.
Don Lang,
Don
trombonist.
Lang, yeah.
Don Lusher, I think of.
Gonna
No.
say, I know Don Lusher.
Yeah, I bet you do. Yeah,
I know of Don Lusher, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Played on the same sort of platforms.
My grandson, when he was went up to comp, he says, "I've been asked to play a musical instrument."
Yeah.
I says, "What's that then?" He says, "I don't know what you call it, but you do it like this." He says, "I can mime it. That's it. I can mime
Oh,
it."
yeah, it's the most distinctive looking instrument, I must say. Yeah.
Jonathan,
Yes.
my grandfather, on my mother's side, whom I never met, was lead violinist at the Royal Philharmonic, and he was also top violinist at the Halley Orchestra in Manchester, Festival Hall was. And I have an autograph book with some names I can't decipher, but D'Souza's in there, Henry Wood, a whole host of them.
And who's this relative of yours?
His name was Neverson. We're going back pre-Second World War. He died of cancer between the wars. But he used to have all these guys who would come and visit. And you know how different conductors and different artists would discuss different arrangements for a well, he used to come round to my granddad's house, and I know all this because Nana Neverson, his wife, used to tell me, you know, she's the one, Chris, that says turn the hose on them, you know. Everybody's with it. Put the hose on them.
Put the hose on them.
Yeah, put the hose on them. But we've all had a musical strain through the I play now, not very well, a Bechstein hybrid piano, and I can't read music to save my life, but I can pick up tunes.
No, I mean that's the main thing. Yeah,
and I don't know why. Yeah, I can play the melody, and I've been taught how to add chords, you know, with the left hand, you know, while I'm playing the melody. It's just something that's in our blood. It's amazing, you know.
As you know, Ian, I've been a musical strain for a long time.
Well,
it's a strain on music.
The only way I can get the dogs to go to sleep at night, because they think 11 o'clock is playtime, is to play them Pathétique second movement, Jonathan.
Yes.
Discerning animals.
Jonathan. Yeah.
Are you like guitarists when asked how many violins do you want? The answer is just one more. I mean, that's what guitarists always say. But how many have you got?
How many have I got? Just one. That's the one. That's the one I use the whole time. Yes.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, sometimes I need to have it some work done on it, and J&A Beer, who are the dealers who sold it to me, they look after it, and they lend me a fiddle for a few days. But no, I only possess one fiddle. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Wow. But
what's
well insured.
What's the sign of a good bow? We know about the fiddle, but you also mentioned the bow. What's the sign of a good bow?
Well, balance, if that's not too vague a word, that you know when you draw the bow, what's going to happen with the bow, and that there's an evenness in the contact with the strings, and that all the sort of various subtleties you need to do with a bow, bouncing the bow, spiccato, and all kinds of bow techniques, that the bow is up to it, and you know, just an ordinary bow won't do it. I remember after I had this bow as a prize at the Academy, the BBC phoned me up and they wanted me to go on the BBC Tomorrow's World programme, which I did, to demonstrate a bow that was synthetic. It was made out of fiberglass with synthetic hair, and it was being used in schools. That was where they were going to use it. So you could snap it across your leg, but you couldn't because the thing would bend round like that, and you could just put a shank of hair in either end. And of course, the thing on Tomorrow's World was that I played the same piece of music twice, and of course it didn't sound any different. But with a bow, a really good bow, it will do certain things which an ordinary stick, let alone a fiberglass one, is not going to do so easily.
I remember some years ago,
Pardon?
the fiddler the violinist in the band for the Light Opera group
Yeah,
spent £1,000 on a bow. We
Yeah.
couldn't believe it, and that's 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So they must be
Wow.
hell of an expensive.
yes, a good bow costs a lot of money. Yeah, it does. I've got a Tubbs, which is an old English bow, and that's a terrific bow, that is. But I wouldn't play it for a big symphony concert or out of doors. It's some bows you can use for all sorts of things, but my Tubbs bow I wouldn't use for that sort of very hard playing.
Yeah. So, how did you get into playing in the for the film scores and that?
Oh, that I was on holiday in Weymouth, and the phone went one morning in the hotel, and this person said, "I'm Sid Sachs." Well, in the music business in those days, Sid Sachs was Mr. Big, and he used to fix all the orchestras. And once you worked for him, you were very lucky indeed. And he wanted me to go along to play at a BBC Film of the Month, do the backing with my string quartet for that. So I got a very lucky break with that. But it all came through my sort of growing experience and reputation in classical music. When I left the academy, I went to Ulster, to Belfast on trial as leader of the Ulster Orchestra. And I didn't get that job. But I also didn't learn to iron a shirt because my mum sent me away and I burnt a hole straight through the back of it. And I swore there and then I would never iron another shirt in my life. And eventually, when I moved into Finchley Road, I used to go to this laundry, and they knew I was a musician. And the guy said to me one day, he said, "You've not heard of a musician called Adrian Bolt, have you?" And I said, "He's a famous conductor." And he said, "Well, he hasn't been in to collect his shirts recently." I said, "Well, that could owe something to the fact that he's been dead for 6 months." And anyway, I remember, one has sort of piecemeal memories of things. I remember going down the road to get some stuff for a picnic that the conductor wanted to have for the orchestra. And the manager said to me, he said, "For Christ's sake, don't open your mouth," because it was in a very Catholic part of Belfast at the height of the Troubles. And so I went down the road with the manager and with the conductor, who was Dutch. And so we got away with that one. But after Ulster, I got a job at the University of Sussex, a post as my string quartet became the quartet in residence at Sussex University. And part of my career has been playing chamber music, string quartets. And in more recent years, until they all died, except Ken, who's 100, and I spoke to him yesterday, we played string trios and piano quartets. And Johnny Pearson, I don't know whether that name means anything to you. He wrote the music for Sleepy Shores and All Creatures Great and Small, Test You. And we had a quartet together, and that was very important. And being at Sussex in those early years led to other things. And I became, I was invited by the Academy of St. Martin in the Fields, which was the greatest chamber orchestra in the world at the time, to go and play with them. And we used to play in different formats. You'd either play with 15 string players playing sort of Baroque and early classical repertoire, sometimes obviously with oboe, a couple of oboes and a couple of horns. And And then sometimes you'd play, and that would be without a conductor. The leader would just direct the players, and it's like playing a large string quartet. And then the other way was with a small symphony orchestra, and Neville Mariner was the conductor of that. And we used to travel all over the world, certainly all over Europe. And I was never an official member of the Academy, but I did a lot of work with them. And I'll never forget going to Warsaw. And this was before the Iron Curtain came down. And apparently the tickets had all completely sold out in sort of half an hour when they went on sale. And at the concert, it was incredible because in the Philharmonic Hall in Warsaw, completely illegal anywhere else, the actual aisles were full of people just sitting in the aisles, let alone the chairs. And at the end of the concert, we played encores for 45 minutes. And it was an extraordinary experience going there to other places. But there are other opportunities I had. I went to do a trial as leader or associate leader, rather, of the Scottish Chamber Orchestra, which had sort of really started not too long before. And they offered me this very good post, and I enjoyed playing up there. The girl who sat next to me was a girl called Beth McKill, known to everybody as Kill Macbeth, of course. And I remember at the opening of the Queen's Hall in Edinburgh, I was sitting really no more than 10 feet away from the Queen, and for 2 hours, and she was right there. And at the opening of the hall, we went to the Western Isles for the first time, and I remember in Skye, I bought a tartan bow tie and put it on, which the management didn't think much of. They thought I was taking the piss, which of course I was really. And but I love playing up in Scotland. We went to the United States the first time, and I remember we went on a tour of England and were playing in Poole, near where my parents live. And in those days, you couldn't get trousers that were sort of elasticated. And so I had a great hole on the inside of my trousers. And my parents overheard somebody saying in the audience next to them, "Oh, I suppose he's not used to wearing anything but a kilt," and which was very good. I got into years and years of touring all over the world with orchestras, and I have to say that the tour I most greatly enjoyed was the one to Barbados. And that's the reason I'm talking to you today, because that's where I met Chris Hall. And Chris took me to the test match. I saw the whole of the Australia-West Indies test match in 1995 with Chris. And that was a great experience. I was so impressed by Chris sort of glad handling Everton Weekes and Gary Sobers. And I thought... But I've been all over the place. I remember a tour with the Philharmonia Orchestra all over Europe. Very difficult, tough tour. And fortunately, I was playing as an extra, and we played on a very small platform somewhere in Switzerland, Saint-Gallen. And so they left me out of the concert, and they gave me a ticket to go to the concert. And I flogged it at the door to a ticket tout and went and saw this Swiss National Circus across the road. On the penultimate night, we were playing in Naples, and after the concert, we had to go straight to the docks to get the boat over to Sicily for the last concert the next day. And even as we got on the boat, the water was just bubbling up and down. It was incredibly rough. And I was very glad my name was just about the first to be called for my cabin, because I lay down and I was all right. But there was an earthquake, huge earthquake off the Italian coast. And we were about 6 hours late getting into Palermo the next day. And you felt the whole ground was sort of moving under you still. After the concert, I tell this to illustrate the fact that musicians can be as hoodlum-like as football fans. Some of us got up to this top floor in the hotel, and there was a whole pile of dinner plates. and we just hurled them out one by one onto the street below, and the sound was so terrific. And fortunately, we got out before somebody came up and apprehended us. But yes, there've been many trips. Actually, the ones that are in the same place, where you stay in the same place, are much more pleasurable, because you always know, where you're coming home to rest, and where you're going on to. And I remember several trips like that in Italy. And of course, it gives you things on days off to give you a chance to go and do other things. And I remember in Milan, a lot of the lads went off to see the exhibition. It was the 250th anniversary of the death of Stradivari. So they went off to Cremona, but some of us went to the San Siro, of course, to watch Inter. And we've been to all sorts of places. I remember in Tokyo, we played Carmen there, and in Hiroshima and other places around the town, around the country. And in Tokyo, I promised to go and see some Japanese book dealers on behalf of an American book dealer friend of mine who wanted to get involved in book dealing in Japan. And I showed this Japanese book dealer his catalogue, and he sort of flicked through it, and he noticed an item by Winston Churchill. And he said to me, in all seriousness, he said to me, in Japan, we're not interested in Churchill, only Hitler. And he said it with absolutely straight face. Actually, a lot of these places I remember from football results. I remember Tokyo, because we won 1-0 at Liverpool, and so it was a particularly good time. I remember all sorts of places from good results. I remember Perth. That's not the Wacker, that's St Johnstone, that's Scotland. I remember going out between the overture and the concerto to phone up Club Call or whatever it was, to get the latest score in our key relegation game. But I've been, there've been some odd trips I've been to. I spent a week in Stavanger in Norway, leading the local orchestra. And of course, I couldn't speak a word of Norwegian, and the conductor was Swedish, and he couldn't speak a word of English. But fortunately, most of the orchestra could speak English, so that was a help. I remember going to the Gulf states, Kuwait, Bahrain, all those places, on behalf of a little ensemble, on behalf of Jaguar cars, and they were touting their new model around to the locals in the hotels before we had supper in the evening, and after we just played for about an hour in the evening. And I remember I've never put on so much weight in my life. I put on a stone in a week, because normally when you go on tour, you obviously have your bed is in a nice hotel and you get breakfast as well. But on this occasion, we had absolutely everything. So all these Arab guys and their yashmaks would turn up for this little concert, and then we'd go off to the restaurant and eat ourselves stupid, and it didn't cost a thing. So I always remember the Gulf states for that. Germany, I can always remember doing some concerts there where we were doing a last night of the prom sort of program. And literally all these Germans in the audience singing Land of Hope and Glory. It was,
You didn't play the Dam Busters theme, did you?
No, I can't remember. But clearly the Germans couldn't see the irony in all of this.
German sense of humour.
I know.
It was the longest day.
The longest day, yeah. But talking
So,
of
Jonathan,
yes.
Jonathan,
Yeah.
how did you get into? You said this Sid Sykes. How
Sid
did
Sykes, yeah.
the films?
Oh, well, he'd heard of me from my quartet playing and from playing in the Academy of St Martin in the Fields, and so he thought I'd be a safe bet. And somebody had recommended my string quartet as being suitable for this play of the week or play of the month, whatever it was. and that's how I started with him.
It's always
So-
word of mouth, isn't it?
Yes, word of mouth, absolutely.
Yeah.
Word of
So-
mouth. And
Presumably, when you were playing, saying GoldenEye, you weren't following Pierce Brosnan around going diddle-a-did, diddle-a-did, diddle-a-did.
oh, sometimes the most banal of stuff. And but I remember, yes, the travel thing, of course, in my profession is enormous. And I remember playing in South Korea one week, and then in Mexico City the next week, and coming back to London in between. And of course, one week your body clock is way ahead, and one week it's way behind. And of course, height has a lot of things. I remember playing in Bogota, and we went over just for one concert, and they had to supply oxygen, particularly for the wind players, because of the height and the breathlessness, so that people had access to that. In the old days, orchestras used to go out to Europe and do concerts just for the day. I mean, in my time, you came back the next morning, but I did once or twice. I remember going to Poland. I remember to Poznan, and going out from Luton early in the morning. They're 3 hours ahead in Portugal, or were in Portugal, in Poland. And we did the concert fairly early. The coach was at the door of the concert hall, and we were back on the charter flight and back at Luton in time for me to be back home in Finchley Road at 1 o'clock in the morning. And but that can be very tough. I remember.
How did the payment structure work, John?
What, just for the?
You get paid? Were you working for, musicians' union, so to speak?
I've never had a job in my life. I've always been a freelance player, which means I've played for a lot of orchestras which employ people purely on Schedule D as freelance players, although I've had positions in orchestras, but I've always been self-employed. And the orchestra plays, yes, or the fixer in the case of the films, I make out an invoice to Universal or Disney or whatever, but the payment actually comes from the Sid Sachs or whoever it is. So it's quite complicated.
Any royalties?
Jonathan?
Any royalties thereafter?
Yes, I don't get any royalties from the films. That's the difference. That's why Hollywood comes to London, because they don't have to pay residual payments. Yeah.
You mentioned altitude and the breathlessness for the wind section. But what about the other instruments? I imagine that caused tuning problems and all sorts if you're playing.
A little bit, yes, a little bit, yeah.
So, wait, just going back to the people that you've played with, you mentioned about meeting Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
What about, do you come across the actors in the films, or are you in a studio playing it and then
No, very rarely. When you do TV dramas, it's all, the actors aren't there. Of course, it's all been done. I've yes, I meet some of the musicians. I remember I used to do a whole month with Eric Clapton at the Albert Hall, and I was sitting up the front, and every night he'd turn and shake hands with me, and I'd say, "Bravo, Eric," and that was really good. He actually is the most talented, gifted person in light music I've ever met. Wonderful guitarist and artist. And yeah.
Yeah, I saw him at the Albert Hall, so possibly show the back.
Yes, I was there. Yeah. Probably.
He's quite poorly at the moment, Jonathan.
So I gather, yes.
He's had COVID and he's got long COVID, and he's not a very well man. Yeah.
Which
He's a big cricket fan as well, isn't he?
That's where I saw it. I saw it on one of my friend's sites for cricket. He was he is a Bunbury.
He's a Bunbury.
Okay, and so the Bunburys just think absolutely the world of him, and quite right too.
Yeah.
And they were reporting how not very well he is today.
Oh dear.
How old is he now?
I don't know. 60, isn't he 60?
Yeah,
I
must
don't,
be
I
in his
don't,
So,
yeah.
older than that, I would have thought.
but his first love outside of his career, his music, was his cricket.
I
He's
didn't
an
realise that. Yeah.
absolute fanatical cricket player, and he ran the Eric Clapton 11 v the Bunburys for many years.
Right.
Just went all over the place with the Bunburys. Just one of those, bit like Jagger. You know, Jagger's a cricket fanatic.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
The guy who sang for Hot Chocolate was a cricket fanatic. Errol Brown, was it Errol Brown?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you just come across what people like, don't you? And
Eric Clapton is 76.
76.
Much as
76.
that?
Wow.
76. God.
Doesn't look.
So-
doesn't,
He
I
could
hope he's
join
all
our
right.
group then, couldn't he?
He could. We'll invite him on. Get Jonathan to invite him.
Yeah. Jonathan, what's
Yes.
the strangest place you've ever played at?
The toilet where he met Paul McCartney, I think, playing with his
Oh,
dingling.
that's interesting. There've been some wonderful occasions. I remember in Paris, we were playing a month or 3 weeks at the Châtelet Theatre. And on the first night, before we started playing, we were booed loudly by the audience. And it's the only time I've ever been booed. And Ricardo Schai, the conductor, put a notice up at his own risk on the notice board, apologizing, saying this was deplorable. And it was entirely because of the jingoism of the French audience, who resented the fact it was an English orchestra. Well, Sinfonietta was far better than any French orchestra could have played. And we got, that got better. But, I remember playing an outdoor concert in Dorking in Surrey, and we used to do these sort of every weekend in the summer, and people would come along and have their picnics, and thousands of people there. And one night here at Dorking, I was sitting in the violin section, looking across to the cello section, and next to one of the double bass players was a bloke who was stark naked. And there was a bit of a sort of, and I thought, if he comes on the platform and into the middle, I mustn't catch his eye, otherwise he'll come and wave it in my face. Anyway, he did come on, and he stood next to the conductor, waving it around in front of the audience. And the men in blue were there very quickly and made their way through the orchestra to apprehend him. And he just jumped off the platform and legged it through the audience, and he was never seen again. So terrible. The things you remember about concerts are actually the things you shouldn't remember, and you don't remember because of the music. I mean, I remember the deaths that have happened. I remember I was playing when I was a student at the Royal Academy of Music. We were doing the Requiem by Verdi, and we were only into the second number, the Dies Irae, and the conductor sort of keeled forward and collapsed. And he had a heart attack in front of me, and he died on the way to hospital. It was at least the shortest concert I've ever done, because that happened after only about 9 minutes. But I always remember that. That was shocking, of course. And I remember somebody in a choir in Jersey, in St. Helier, during the St. Matthew Passion, died during the performance. And I remember a conductor dying. Well, no, he didn't die. He had a stroke during the rehearsal and died a week later. But, so strange dates. Talking about the Liverpool Phil, I only got booked once by the Liverpool Phil, and they didn't want me to go and play on the platform. They said, go to the festival hall. We want you to go up to the 5th floor, and we're playing the Planets, and we want you to give the offstage choir an A before they sing. And so I got my fiddle out, I played the A. But obviously, it must have been a G sharp or a B flat, because I never got asked again. But I got a concert fee just for playing an A to the offstage choir. And I used to get. Sorry, yes.
Sorry, no, I didn't want to interrupt you. Sorry.
I remember going to play in some country house in Buckinghamshire, where there used to be great political conferences, and there was all these politicians here, and I could see Geoffrey Howe, who was there, nodding off whilst we were playing, and I caught his eye. And he came up to me in the interval. He said, "You know, you caught my eye as I was nodding off. I'm terribly sorry about that." He said, "I have to spend my life coming here, listening to boring politicians sounding off, and I always fall asleep. And I so much wanted not to fall asleep listening to something I really wanted," which I thought was charming, and I loved that. But I remember at some conference in Harrogate, no, it was some, oh, I don't know, some sort of thing of music and stage stuff. And we got to the lunch time in the rehearsal, and we were going off for lunch, and I was in this room on my own, and suddenly in came Bobby Charlton, and he said, where's the lunch? And we were talking about this, and then suddenly Sebastian Coe came in, the great Welsh tenor Geraint Evans, and I've never felt so irrelevant and wiped out, because nobody wanted to talk to me, but they're all talking to each other, and nobody really wanted to know where the lunch was, so I just sort of slunk off after that. But no, there've been sort of many funny memories. About 5 years ago, when Jimmy Hill died, I organised the music for his memorial service in the cathedral. And Jimmy Hill was a great opera lover. So we did an arrangement of something from Saint-Saëns's Samson and Delilah. And at the end of the evening, the whole audience stood up, the whole congregation. And we, the sort of handful of players at the front, stood up, and we sang the Sky Blue song. And I could see Roy Hodgson near the front, and he was looking at my lips, and he thought, surely that fucker doesn't know the words of the Sky Blue song, does he? There have been many. Another musician.
Yes. Yeah, let me just interrupt. Big Paul, you have a question.
Well, two I'd like to ask Jonathan before time runs out. Two, if I may, Jonathan. Number one, who is your favourite composer and why? And number two, what's your personal favourite piece of music?
Do you know, to answer the second one, actually Messiah, I think. Messiah is incredible. And I tell you partly why it's incredible, because he wrote it in Dublin, Handel did. I don't know what he was doing in Dublin. And he wrote it in the space of 6 weeks. And the theory is that he probably had some form of stroke or electrical, his brain sort of went crazy, because every single number is a masterpiece. And just to write out the whole parts and the whole piece, and do that, compose that and conceive it and write it out in 6 weeks was astonishing. Composers, all the great composers I like, but I've got, I suppose, not one necessarily stands out above the others. But
he might have been drinking the Guinness.
Could be. Could be.
Yeah.
Yes,
That just brought back an uncomfortable memory for me. I got thrown out of the school choir while we were rehearsing the Messiah, because instead of attending rehearsals, I was playing football. Yeah. So they kicked me out. Yeah. I lost to the school choir.
Absolutely. I remember doing the Messiah in the old drill hall in Scunthorpe, and there was an old chap in the front row, and you know how in the Hallelujah chorus, the audience all stand up. And throughout the whole concert, he was wearing his cloth cap on his head. And I thought, surely he's going to take it off when he stands up for the Hallelujah chorus. But no, the cap remained on. But actually, time running out, but, I can drop names about people and places and things like that. But it's actually sort of odd little things that stick in your memory in a musical career. And I'll never forget, 2 or 3 things, but one, playing in Norway to an audience of Down syndrome children, and they all had Down syndrome. And what they were getting out of being able to bang instruments and to be able to join in and sing was absolutely terrific. But my biggest memory, in a way, was in Huddersfield Town Hall. And I was looking down in the audience, and there was a guy in the front row, and he didn't have any eyes, literally had no eyes, but he had eye sockets. You could see where the eyes should be. And it was extraordinary because he didn't need eyes for you to have the impression of how he was feeling and the expression in his face, that he was really enjoying the music, and it was special to him. And, you know, it's just little things like that, rather than necessarily the glamorous moments and glamorous people that, you know, stick in the mind. And I always remember that in Huddersfield Town Hall.
Jonathan, there was a chap called Keith, but everybody called him Keith. And then I realised he had an eye missing.
Oh, right.
Yes, lol. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Question of Jonathan. Now, you say you were freelance. Were there any times in your career when you went without a bit of work, waiting for the phone to ring? Or
Oh,
were you
yes.
continuously-
And of course, the other thing is when you take a date on, and then something better gets offered, you have to phone up the person who's offered the original date, and you have to make some excuse. And the number of aunts I've had who've died, the number of funeral addresses I've got to give, the number of times I've sprained different parts of my body, and you have to keep who you've lied to.
Yeah. Sorry, Jonathan, it's something quite trivial, but my partner Jenny is listening to this, fascinated, and she says, have you ever accompanied Scott Walker, her hero?
I don't think so, no. No, I'm sorry, I can't play.
Oh, you've just gone down in her estimation.
Right, chaps, before we finish, I will say thank you at the end. Just to let you know, I've done a sweep for the Euros. So someone will be getting a team. Or have you got one, John?
No, I've just got the, I've not done it.
Right.
I was going to mention it.
I'll be drawing a team out, and I'll be drawing a person out like that. So,
excellent.
So I'll do it all, and I'll email everybody who your team is. Okay.
It's only a sweep. We're not playing, are we?
I don't want Scotland.
Right. So we just over a minute left. Jonathan, is there anything you can add finally?
No. I remember going down a road in Portugal. There was this girl who was reading out, guiding us around, and she said down this main street, she said, "You look at the end. There's that big cockerel up on the on the plinth there at the end." And she said to the player, she said, "You look at the big cock at the end of the street." And of course, all the musicians just lapsed laughing. She shut up. Sorry, that was.
Okay, right. Thank you ever so much, Jonathan.
Well done, Jonathan.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. Brilliant.
Okay,
Can I book you to speak to our Probers Club, Jonathan?
Of course.
I'm very pleased with that drink in Steve-O's bar, Jonathan.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Just one last thing. If you look on United's website, you'll see details of Len Badger's funeral. You can listen in. There's a link to it. It's on Friday at 12:30. So it's on the SUFC website, so you can get details if you want to listen in to Len Badger's funeral.
No, you sent